looking at reproduction, and when you're looking at the different ways that women behave regardless of the societies in which they're in, that there is definitely a thing which makes a woman distinctly from a man. So they're not interchangeable widgets, in other words. That's how I would view it.
Okay. So, what makes you believe that one of those is more fit to lead than the other?
Okay, well, that's a conflation of gender versus sex. But if you're talking about what makes you think men should be able to lead over women,
what do you think personally makes them more capable of leading than a woman?
well, it's not even capability, though, that would come into it. It comes down to a matter of force. So men have a monopoly on force, so they can take away rights and they can give rights, but women can't take away rights and women can't give rights. Only men can do that.
And you're saying the monopoly of force is based purely on physicality and biology?
Well, yeah. I mean, when you're talking about, you mean physical attributes?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes, men are far stronger, have larger skeletons, et cetera, et cetera. So, essentially, they're the dominant sex for that reason.
Have you ever met a female police officer?
Sure.
Would you say that she has the same ability to enforce the law as a male police officer?
No.
Why not? They both have guns. Wouldn't you say a gun is an equalizer?
Sometimes, unless the man also has a gun, and then it's unequal again. So the problem is even then, you still run into other problems too, which is when men can apply physical force up close and personal, guns become useless. And we see this all the time when male police officers end up in engagements with women and men. They seem to be able to handle those engagements fairly well, though sometimes they're overpowered by men. Women, on the other hand, have a much harder time handling physical engagements, and they can't always just move right to their gun, right? They're supposed to control a situation. External that's the last resort. You don't want to go straight for the handgun, but unfortunately they can be surprised very quickly. So even during a traffic stop, something like this, they don't have nearly the ability to defend themselves that men do, for sure. And the standards get lowered, in fact, so that they can even get a job as a cop. So.
Oh, interesting take there. The first thing I noticed you said was that a man with a gun and a woman with a gun would not be equal.
That's correct.
Personally, I would say that I disagree with that because it's about the maximum amount of force they can exert at each other. If they're both standing a foot away from each other and the most powerful thing they can do is shoot the gun, then they both have the same maximum amount of power. You could argue that a man is more physically capable if they're hand-to-hand combating, but you could also argue, okay, what about a 5'5", 100-pound man with a gun next to a 6-foot, 200-pound woman with a gun?
Have you ever used a handgun?
No, but I just asked
you
you a question.
Yeah, no, but
Okay.
and I'm going to answer it, I promise. Have you ever used a rifle?
No, I've never used any kind of gun.
No, okay. They're complex machines, and they require physical strength to use well. It's not like the movies where you just point it a direction, you pull the trigger, and the bullet magically hits the target. Guy's diving on the table, and he's doing this number, you know what I mean? He's spinning around with the handguns, pulling the trigger, and everybody's dying. That doesn't map onto reality. Guns use blowback, and they're not easy to wield, not for men competently or women. It takes practice, but men are much better able to control recoil. They're much better able to control the actions on guns. They're much better able to reload. Their physical strength means a great deal. Even in action reloading speed, it means a great deal. So they're still at an advantage even if you're both armed.
So do you think women deserve a right to own a gun?
Yeah.
You just expressed to me that you believe women would be more incompetent as compared to a man when it comes to learning how to expertly handle a gun.
So?
Wouldn't you see that as like a safety concern or?
No.
Okay.
Would there not also be discrepancies among men, though, comparing one man to another, too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't really understand
that,
the
which
argument.
is why his point doesn't make any sense at all, because he just admitted that anyone can be bad at using a gun or good at using a gun.
Yeah, we're just talking about averages. So if you're physically stronger and somebody's physically weaker, you're going to be more prone to be able to use a gun well than the person who's physically weaker. That's just the truth.
Okay.
It requires physical strength to utilize it. It's like, think of it like, it's not a direct one-to-one, but it'd be like wielding a sledgehammer. Would you say somebody who's stronger would be probably better than somebody who's weaker at wielding a sledgehammer, even though that's not always going to be the case?
That one is pulling a trigger and receiving the pushback, and one of them is actually wielding with force behind it.
Well,
so
it's
that's
not. One is loading a spring-loaded magazine that has significant amounts of pressure behind it. It's under pressure because it has a spring. You're dealing with a gas-operated blowback weapon. So not only are you dealing with the recoil, but you also have to realign your shots. And you have to do all of this within a matter of seconds. Reloading, same thing when it comes to muscle memory. And physical strength for rifles even is a massive deal. Just clearing a jam inside of a gas-operated weapon can require significant strength because you can have shell expansion. So it's just like over and over, physical strength definitely matters. And it also matters to how much ammunition you can carry.
Okay, so if there's a bunch of shorter, weaker men, what is stopping the military from conscripting taller, stronger women who would like play for the WNBA or something?
They could.
Then you just prove that women can enforce rights as well.
No, then what you would still end up with men enforcing rights. It would be men who would enable those women to go after those short, dorky, weak men or whatever.
Well, how are the men enabling the women if the women can also bring up arms? You said the men are enabling them to use the guns?
Yeah, well, men build all the guns, and the military is staffed by men who run it. So those men would be enabling those women to then get armed and be huge and whatever.
They already did that when they invented guns.
No, they didn't do that. Inventing guns didn't create an instant equalizer between men and women with force, because both men and women can use guns, and men use them better than women.
Your argument for why men deserve more rights than women is because men can use guns better than women can.
When did I argue that?
Correct me if I'm wrong then.
Yeah, you're wrong. I didn't argue. That
okay,
wasn't my argument.
Please alter what I just said to fit your argument.
What happened was, and this is what I got in my notes, you said, but can't women just use guns as an equalization to force? And then I went into the reasons why that's not actually force equalization. How on earth you attributed that to, that's my argument for why men should have the right to vote and women shouldn't. I have no idea. I don't know where you came up with that.
Oh, sorry. I was kind of assuming based off of the last podcast. What would you say then is the reason why?
Well, let's stay away from the right to vote for now. Okay, we'll come back to it for reasons, right, that we discussed. We'll come back to it. And let's instead just look at force equalization, okay? Meaning, who enforces whom's rights? Do you think that it's equal between men and women, rights enforcement?
I don't think men or women enforce rights. I think institutions enforce rights.
Well, so...
Men and women give away, or they concede things to allow that institution to have power over them when they enter social contract with the government.
Does a room have power? Or do people have power?
People in institutions have power.
So then it's still people who have the power.
The institution is what is allowing them to enact their power.
Yeah, but who gives the institution the authority to do that?
Also, the people.
So then it's just people who have the power.
Through institutions.
Yeah, but institutions have no autonomy, no consciousness, no nothing. That would just be people or the institution, right? Can you have an institution absent a person?
So you would say you have as much power as the President of the United States of America right now?
No, I would say that not even close.
His power was given to him by the institutions that make up the American government.
No, his power was given to him by the people, and
who created the institutions.
That's true, but they're the ones who empower it. And the same thing with the military protecting it. The institution itself has no power absent people, is my point. So it really just comes down to people. So if you were to say between men and women, which sex do you think enforces rights? Would you say it's more along males or more along females?
I'd say it's both.
Yeah, but more. Or is it exactly equal? You think there's really no delineation?
Because of the nature of the citizen and the state relationship, all citizens in a society are equally giving up their rights for the purpose of the government to say, okay, we'll protect these rights if you give up certain other rights. So I'd say
I don't actually know what you're saying right now. What do you mean?
Let me try and rephrase that a little bit better.
Okay.
I don't think it's unequal as to who enforces the rights.
Okay.
I'd say men and women enforce them equally because they both have to give up some of their rights in order to live in the society that enforces the rights.
Which rights do they have to give up?
Well, I couldn't pull out a gun and shoot you right now, could I?
So you think that that's a right? That
Not a
you're giving
right,
up?
but, well, don't you not think rights exist anyway?
I mean, whether I do or I don't, that still wouldn't have anything to do with the previous statement of you gave up your right to.
You're giving up free will. You're giving up something. Yes, you're giving up something in exchange for rights, which is, yeah.
What are you giving up?
Free will. You're giving up, have you ever, like Hobbes' Leviathan, man in a constant state of war where they pursue their own individual selfish interests? We give that up in some part, not fully, but in some parts to agree with the government in a contract. We're not going to do these things if you protect us from other people who are going to do those things.
Okay, and who's doing the protecting?
It's people who are hired to the institutions by the government, paid with tax dollars that are funded by both men and women, so I'd say.
Like the United States military?
Yeah.
Would you say that that's mostly men or mostly women?
The military is not an enforcer the way that we've been talking about it, though. The police would be the enforcer the way we've been talking about.
Why wouldn't the military be enforcers?
I mean, like,
rights?
in terms of foreign matters. Because then you're not enforcing rights. You're enforcing, that's on an international scale. You're enforcing your nation's sovereignty.
Well, that would be enforcing the rights of the people.
That's the
inside
nation's
nation.
right to sovereignty. That's not a people's right. They're
Well,
two
yeah, it
different
is.
levels of abstraction.
If the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor, isn't the United States military going to be enforcing your rights at that point? If a foreign body invades,
They're not.
Aren't they protecting you the same way a police officer would be in that context?
But states aren't motivated to do that particularly just to protect my individual life. It's to protect the sanctity of a state as a whole because the state protects the rights of the individuals within the state.
So they're there to protect the state who's protecting the rights of you. So they're
Yes.
protecting your rights.
Okay. Yeah, I guess. Sure.
And they're enforcing